Tony's history with the magazine actually goes a long way back, and I thought we could start out by hearing a little bit about how that piece first came to be in the magazine.
So there was age 44. I was still dunking French fries at Brasserie Leal, which I thought was a pretty good gig at the time. But there was this little free paper they gave out on corners in the little boxes called the New York Press. I thought, I'm going to write something that will entertain other cooks. Maybe I'll get $100, and my fry cook will find this funny. So I wrote that first piece, the first version of it, with the intention of being published by the New York Press and making $100 and being a hero to a few fry cooks in New York. I wrote it. I sent it to the New York Press. The editor at the New York Press in charge of that department at the time was Sam Sifton, of course. As much as he liked it and as much as he assured me that he would print it, he did not have the juice, apparently, to keep me from getting bumped every week by the then publisher of the New York Press, Russ Smith. So every week I'd run to the corner, I'm going to be in the free paper. And I wasn't in there, and in a moment of frustration and possible inebriation, I mentioned this to my mom, who said, well, you should send it to the New Yorker, And I'm like, I know somebody there, they'll read it, And I'm thinking, like, what is the statistical likelihood ever, even if you're represented, even if there's no chance, ever. Out of alcohol-fueled hubris and on the insistence of my mom, I stuffed a print of this thing I'd written into an envelope and sent it off to the New Yorker and thought, that's the last I will ever hear of this. And then a month and a half later, kitchen phone rings, and it's David Remnick, the publisher of the New Yorker, saying, we'd like to run this piece. And when it ran, it transformed my life within 2 days. Within 2 days, everything changed. It was a hard news story, first of all. I mean, I had just come back from Japan. I was doing jury duty, and I remember coming out of jury duty, and there were journalists there with cameras asking me about this piece. And I think the next day I had the offer of a book deal. Everything changed, everything from that point on.
I got to ask you about Trump. And it's weird, right? Because most of the time I spent with you when I was working on the profile was prior to the election.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure we were sitting there in Vietnam, the two of us. It either was just about to or had just had this incredible experience of eating dinner with President Obama. And at the time, the notion that Donald Trump would ever be president was unthinkable. Yeah. And boy, was I wrong.
What does it do? I mean, so here's what strikes me. I saw you right after the meal with Obama, and you were veritably buzzing and with kind of exhilaration. And some of that, and this wasn't me intuiting, I mean, you said this yourself, was that he seemed, in your encounters with him, Obama did, to resonate strongly with, what might be said to be the kind of the thesis of your show, which is get out there, see the world, see people where they live, and try and understand their experience and how they got to be where they are. And I think you can make an argument that there are aspects of where the country seems to be drifting today that are like a repudiation of that, right?
Yes.
Or antithetical to that.
There's no doubt about it.
And I wonder, what does that mean for you? Like, what does that mean for the show?
Interesting. Look, I had dinner with what felt like a regular guy. I was jacked. I mean, all of us, when we were shooting in a relatively small room. Secret Service couldn't fit in the room. So we were alone with the president and these customers and crew members who were eating. All of us felt very relaxed in his presence. This elegant, empathetic, a man who seemed to speak from his heart. Not running for office anymore, he spoke very freely and off the cuff. I asked him at one point, do you smell that, Mr. President? Do you smell that? The wood fire, the pork sizzling in the distance, durian, the smell of street food. And he responded very emotionally about his childhood, parts of his childhood in Jakarta in Indonesia. He was sentimental about those things. So to go from that to this, where the world does seem to be turning inwards and fearful of the other, and, you know, President Obama talked about how important it is to travel and walk in somebody else's shoes and think about the other. The pendulum seems to be swinging in the other way. Look, I don't know. I scrupulously avoid an agenda as best I can. Clearly, I'm pissed off about some things. And I do have some issues that I feel very strongly about. Immigration, this is a personal thing to me. You know, you work with, you know, Mexicans and Central Americans for as many years and as intimately as I have. That's going to be an issue for me, and I'm going to use every opportunity to talk about it. But generally speaking, I try to avoid thinking about it. I go out there, I go to places, I do a bunch of stuff, and I talk about how that felt and how I react to those things as truthfully as I can. And by truthfully, I mean I do not owe you journalistic truth as a viewer. I owe you only the truth about how I felt at the time. Do I feel stupid, disoriented, angry, passionate, confused? That's the only mission I set for myself. That hasn't changed because I've understood, as much as I might think it's good for America to go to Vietnam or to Cuba or to Iran, to walk in their shoes and to experience what I experienced in those places, that one is just as likely to feel that same way, that same empathy, that same sense of surprise and confusion of having all your preconceptions turned upside down in West Virginia, where I just was, which is the absolute heart of gun, God, and Trump country. And I cannot tell you how warmly I was received there, how comfortable I felt, how beautiful it is, how generally fucking awesome. And as wrong as I've been, I'm always the stupidest person in the room wherever I go. You know, you shoot in Beirut, you can be pretty sure if you're in a room full of people that you have no idea what's actually going on, what the real agendas of everybody is. But it's the same in West Virginia. It's the same. So really, to answer your question, things aren't that different.
You were shooting a show?
Yeah. It was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. And I think that's one of the things that travel has done for me is that, you know, I said, well, wait a minute, you know, I'm meeting with Viet Cong, I'm meeting with former KGB officers, I'm meeting with, you know, all of these other belief systems in places where practices or beliefs are completely foreign to the way I was brought up, you know, and yet I give, you know, I'm empathetic, I'm willing to give people a pass whose attitudes towards women or homosexuals or to, you know, are complete, would be conversation enders to me. I mean, it was like, you know, you say this shit at my table in New York, that's it. We're never going to meet again. But here it's okay when I'm in West Africa or parts of Asia, the Middle East. Why can't I kind of go to West Virginia and make that same leap of faith that people are doing the best they can?